The courtroom felt smaller than it should have. I sat at the defendant's table watching my wife of 32 years tell a judge I had ruined her life. Her voice was steady, practiced, like she had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times before stepping through those heavy wooden doors. "Your Honor, my husband held me back from everything I could have become," she said, her hand gesturing dramatically. "While I had dreams and ambitions, he kept me small. He kept me dependent. He made every decision about money, about our future, about everything that mattered." Her attorney, a sharp-dressed woman named Victoria, nodded along like this was gospel truth. Behind them, my wife's mother sat in the gallery with her arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on her face. Even our son, 28-year-old Tyler, sat on her side of the courtroom looking uncomfortable but refusing to meet my eyes. I felt myself shrinking in that moment. 32 years reduced to villain status in less than 5 minutes. Then the judge, a gray-haired man named Harrison, flipped through some papers and said something that made my wife pause. "We'll schedule a full financial review within 2 weeks. She smiled, actually smiled, like she had already won. Why was she so confident? That night, I could not sleep. I lay in the small apartment I had rented after she kicked me out 3 months ago, staring at the ceiling and replaying every sacrifice I had made over 3 decades. I remembered working double shifts at the manufacturing plant so she could attend business seminars. I remembered cashing out my retirement fund when she wanted to start her first company. I remembered saying no to promotions that required relocation because she said she needed to stay near her family. Every decision had been about supporting her dreams, her passions, her potential, and now I was the villain. I got up around 2 in the morning and started going through boxes I had packed when I moved out. Most of it was junk, old clothes and books I would never read again. But then I found a box labeled Important Papers in my own handwriting from years ago. Inside were financial documents I had forgotten about, bank statements from accounts I barely remembered opening, loan papers with signatures I did not recall signing. Something did not add up. The next morning, I spread everything across my tiny kitchen table. "My name is Vincent, by the way. I am 56 years old, originally from a small town in Ohio. And if you are watching this, please subscribe to my channel for more stories like this one. You would not believe how the situation unfolds." Anyway, back to those papers. As I sorted through them, patterns started emerging. Business loans I supposedly approved. Lines of credit open in my name. Tax notices that had been forwarded to our old address, but never actually shown to me. My signature appeared on documents I had never seen before. I started organizing everything chronologically, creating folders and timelines. Some papers were from 10 years ago. Others were more recent. But they all had one thing in common. My name was attached to financial obligations I knew nothing about. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. A business registration form from 5 years ago for a company called Meridian Consulting Solutions. The registered owner was listed as Vincent Holloway. That was me. I had never heard of Meridian Consulting Solutions in my life. I spent the next few days piecing together how my wife, Denise, had slowly taken control of everything. Looking back through old emails and text messages, I saw the pattern clearly now. It started small. "Honey, let me handle the bills this month. You've been so stressed." Then it became, "I will take care of the taxes. You just focus on work." Eventually, it turned into, "I open an account for household expenses. Easier to manage everything in one place." She had framed every move as helping me, relieving my burden, being a supportive wife. In reality, she had been isolating me from every financial decision we made as a couple. I signed papers she put in front of me without reading them because I trusted her. She said they were for our future and building something together. I never questioned it. Why would I? She was my wife. Now, sitting alone in my apartment with evidence spread across the table, I discovered what she had actually been building. A massive pile of debt hidden behind my name and credit. The social destruction started soon after our separation. Friends we had known for decades stopped returning my calls. People at our church avoided eye contact when I showed up for Sunday service. Even my brother seemed distant during our phone conversations. Tyler, our son, barely spoke to me anymore. When he did, his words carried an edge I had never heard before. Mom says you controlled all the money, he told me during one awkward coffee meeting. She says you never let her have her own accounts or make her own choices. That is not true, I said, but even in my own ears it sounded weak. She has proof, Dad, documents and everything. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but I did not know what proof she had shown him. So I stayed quiet, which apparently made me look guilty. Then one evening, I received a message from someone I barely knew, a woman named Patricia, who attended our church. The message contained screenshots of a private group chat where Denise had been telling people I was financially abusive, that I had hidden money, and refused to let her work or have independence. Every word was a lie, but everyone believed her. Instead of fighting back publicly, I made 3 appointments. First with financial counselor named Bernard, who specialized in debt resolution. Then with a lawyer named Thomas, who handled complex divorces. Finally with an accountant named Frederick, who could make sense of messy financial records. All 3 told me essentially the same thing after reviewing my documents. You have been used as a financial shield. Bernard said during our first meeting. Someone has been making business decisions and taking on debt using your credit and your name. Thomas, the lawyer, was more blunt. Your wife has been running businesses through your identity. If any of them fail or get sued, you are the one who gets destroyed. Frederick, the accountant, gave me the worst news. Based on these preliminary documents, you could be legally responsible for somewhere between $2 and $3 million in debt and liabilities. $2 to $3 million. I felt sick. Can we prove I did not know about this? Maybe, Thomas said, but it will be difficult. You signed many of these documents. Even if you did not read them, your signature is there. Over the following weeks, Frederick did a deep analysis of every document I had. What he discovered was staggering. Denise had registered 3 separate business ventures over the past decade, all using my information as the primary guarantor. The first was a boutique consulting firm that lasted 18 months before failing. The second was an online retail business that accumulated massive inventory debt before shutting down. The third, Meridian Consulting Solutions, was still technically active but had not made money in over 2 years. Every venture had been funded through loans and credit lines opened in my name. When they failed, the debt rolled over and compounded. Late fees, penalties, interest charges. It all stacked up while I went to work every day completely unaware. Why would she do this? I asked Frederick. Control, he said simply. If these debts are exposed during the divorce, she loses her image as a victim. Everyone will see she was the one mismanaging finances. But if she can get the court to rule before you present this evidence, she walks away clean while you are stuck holding the bag. The trap was brilliant in its cruelty. If I exposed everything now, I risked destroying my own credit and reputation. But if I waited too long, she might win a divorce and leave me responsible for millions in debt. Thomas gave me advice that felt wrong, but made strategic sense. Play the fool, he said. Stop defending yourself. Stop arguing. Let her think she has broken you. So that is what I did. I stopped responding to Tyler's accusations. I apologized publicly to people at church for whatever pain I had caused. I even sent Denise a message saying I just wanted this to be over peacefully. She responded immediately. I am glad you are finally being reasonable. Her confidence grew. She started demanding more in the divorce settlement. Not just half the assets, but 60%, plus alimony, plus a portion of my pension. Victoria, her attorney, filed motion after motion, each one more aggressive than the last. They wanted full control of our joint accounts during the proceedings. They wanted me to pay her legal fees. They wanted supervised division of personal property. And I let them file it all. I nodded and agreed and seemed to crumble under the pressure. Meanwhile, Frederick and Thomas quietly built a case that would dismantle everything. About 6 weeks into the divorce process, Denise started showing up places with a younger man named Kyle. He was 42, worked in real estate, and seemed to be her new boyfriend based on how they acted together. She posted photos on social media about starting fresh, and finally living authentically. She bought new clothes, got her hair done, and started attending events she had never cared about before. Friends told me she was telling people that leaving me was the best decision she ever made. I stayed quiet. I did not react. I did not comment on her posts or ask Tyler about this Kyle person. But while she was busy building her new public image, I was gathering witnesses. Former co-workers from her failed businesses agreed to provide statements. Bank employees confirmed that certain transactions have been processed with suspicious documentation. Business partners she convinced to work with her admitted under oath that she had pressured them to use my name and credit because hers was complicated. The most valuable witness was a man named Gregory who had been an investor in her second business. He was furious about losing money and eager to testify about how Denise had misrepresented her authority and credentials. The evidence kept piling up. Old receipts showed I had paid for her business training courses and certification programs. Thousands of dollars spent on education. She claimed I had denied her. Bank statements proved I had transferred money into her business accounts regularly, sometimes from our savings, sometimes from my own paycheck. I found emails where she had thanked me for supporting her dreams, calling me the best husband, and promising we would both benefit when her companies took off. None of them took off. They all crashed. And now she was claiming I had sabotaged her. One afternoon, Patricia from church called me. I had been thinking about what Denise said in that group chat, she told me. Something did not sit right. I remember you and Denise at events years ago. You always seemed supportive. She was the one who talked about herself constantly. You barely said anything. I appreciate you remembering, I said. There is something else, Patricia continued. Denise asked me for money once, said it was for a business opportunity. I said no, and she got really angry. Told me I would regret not investing when she became successful. Would you be willing to tell that to my lawyer? Absolutely. I had more than a dozen people willing to provide similar stories. Judge Harrison scheduled a hearing to review financial disclosures. Both sides were required to submit complete documentation of assets, debts, and financial history. When Thomas told me about the hearing, I expected Denise to look worried. Instead, she looked annoyed, like this was a waste of her time. During a brief conversation in the courthouse hallway, she actually rolled her eyes at me. This is unnecessary, Vincent. Just accept my terms, and we can be done with this. The judge wants full disclosure, I said quietly. There is nothing to disclose that matters, she replied. I have my documents ready. Do you? She walked away before I could answer, Victoria clicking along beside her in expensive heels. Denise genuinely believed I had nothing. She thought my silence meant defeat. She had no idea what Frederick and Thomas had compiled over the past 2 months. 3 days before the hearing, Thomas handed me a binder 3 inches thick. Everything we need, he said. Testimony, documents, timelines, witnesses. She is not going to know what hit her. Tyler showed up at my apartment one evening unannounced. He looked angry, which was normal these days. But something was different about this visit. Mom says you're trying to ruin her in court, he said before I could even invite him inside. She says you're making up lies because you cannot handle her success. Tyler, I have not. She showed me papers, Dad. Legal documents. Loans you took out that she knew nothing about. That stopped me cold. She said I took out loans? Yes. Secret loans. Money you hid from her. I went to my kitchen table and pulled out one folder. Just one. The thinnest one Frederick had prepared. Before you decide I am lying, I said, look at this. Tyler hesitated, but curiosity won. He opened the folder. Inside were business registration documents from Meridian Consulting Solutions, bank records showing regular losses, and loan papers signed in my name, but applied for by Denise. He read for 10 minutes without saying a word. Finally, he looked up at me. What is this? A business your mother ran for 5 years using my name. I did not know it existed until 3 months ago. Tyler's face had gone pale. That is not possible. There are 2 more just like it. Can I see everything? I showed Tyler the full picture over several hours. His reaction shifted from disbelief to confusion to anger. When we reached the section about his college fund being mortgaged to cover business losses, He actually stood up and paced my tiny living room. My inheritance? He asked, his voice tight. The money Grandpa left me? Your mother used it as collateral 3 years ago. If I had not been making payments, the bank would have seized it. Tyler sat back down heavily. She told me you spent on yourself, on tools and hobbies. I have not bought tools in a decade. He was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, why did you not tell me this before? Because I just found out myself. And because I needed proof before I said anything. Your mother has been very convincing. Tyler left that night without saying much, but I could see his loyalty wavering. 2 days later, Denise called me screaming. What did you tell Tyler? He is asking me questions. He is accusing me of lying. I showed him the truth. I said calmly, you are turning my son against me. No, Denise, you did that yourself. She hung up. An hour later, I got a threatening text message from her mother. Denise and her mother, Lorraine, cornered me in the courthouse parking lot 3 days before the hearing. Lorraine was a tall woman with sharp features and an even sharper tongue. She had never liked me, always thought Denise had married beneath herself. You need to stop this nonsense, Lorraine said, stepping close enough that I could smell her perfume. Drop these ridiculous accusations and settle quietly. There are no accusations, I said. Just facts. Facts. Denise laughed bitterly. You are embarrassing yourself, Vincent. Everyone knows you are just bitter because I finally found the courage to leave. I am not bitter. I am protecting myself. From what? Denise demanded. From finally being held accountable for 32 years of control and manipulation? Lorraine added, if you go through with this hearing, you're going to look like a vindictive fool. Is that really what you want? I looked at both of them and realized they genuinely believed their own story. They had told these lies so many times that the truth had become irrelevant. I will see you in court, I said, and walked to my car. Behind me, Lorraine shouted something I did not catch. I did not turn around. A week before the major hearing, there was a minor procedural ruling about temporary asset control. The judge granted Denise access to one of our joint savings accounts for living expenses. She celebrated like she had won the entire case. She posted on social media about justice being served. She told friends and family that the court was finally seeing through my lies. Kyle took her out to dinner. Tyler saw the photos and called me, sounding conflicted. She seems really happy, Dad. I know. Maybe she is telling the truth. Maybe things were not as bad as you are making them seem. I did not argue. I just said, wait for the hearing, Tyler, then decide. Meanwhile, Frederick finished his final report. The document was devastating. It outlined every business failure, every hidden debt, every misused asset. It showed a pattern of financial recklessness masked as entrepreneurship. This is airtight, Thomas said when he reviewed it. We can prove she systematically used your credit and name to fund ventures that had no realistic chance of success. We can prove she hid the failures from you. And we can prove she is now trying to blame you for her own mismanagement. Will the judge believe it? If we present it right? Absolutely. The financial report Thomas submitted to the court was 200 pages long. It included bank records, business filings, witness statements, and forensic analysis of where money had actually gone over the past decade. Frederick had traced every dollar. The first business, a consulting firm, had spent $80,000 on marketing before making a single sale. The second business, online retail, had purchased inventory that sat in a warehouse until it was liquidated at a 90% loss. Meridian Consulting Solutions had paid Denise a salary for 3 years despite generating almost no revenue. All of it had been funded through loans and credit lines opened in my name. The report also revealed something I had not known. Denise had transferred money from our joint accounts into business accounts, then paid herself from those business accounts. Essentially, she had been double-dipping, taking marital assets and calling them business income. When Thomas showed me the final analysis, I felt vindicated and furious at the same time. This changes everything, Thomas said. She will not be able to claim she was held back financially. The evidence shows she had complete access to funds and complete authority to make decisions. She just made terrible decisions. When do we present this? At the hearing. And trust me, it is going to be explosive. The hearing started on a cold Tuesday morning in November. The courtroom was more crowded than I expected. Tyler sat in the middle, not on either side. Patricia and several other witnesses sat in the back. Denise, Lorraine, and Victoria sat at their table looking confident. Judge Harrison entered, and everyone stood. Once we were seated, he reviewed the agenda. We are here to examine financial disclosures and determine equitable distribution of marital assets, he said. Both parties have submitted documentation. We will review these materials and hear testimony as needed. Victoria stood first and presented Denise's version of events. She painted me as controlling, secretive, and financially abusive. She claimed I had made all major decisions without input and had kept Denise in the dark about our true financial situation. My client was a prisoner in her own marriage, Victoria said dramatically. She was forced to rely entirely on her husband for every dollar, every decision, every opportunity. Now she is simply asking for what is fair after 3 decades of service. Judge Harrison listened without expression. Then he turned to Thomas. Counsel for respondent? Thomas stood and placed a thick folder on the podium. Your Honor, we have substantial evidence that tells a very different story. Denise whispered something to Victoria. Victoria looked confused and shook her head. The judge said, "Proceed." Thomas began laying out the evidence systematically. First, he showed that I had worked steadily for 32 years, while Denise pursued multiple business ventures. Then he demonstrated that every venture had been funded through my credit and name. The respondent was not kept in the dark. Thomas said he was kept in debt. Victoria objected several times, but Judge Harrison overruled her each time. The evidence was documented, verified, and damning. Then Thomas called Frederick to the stand. Frederick explained the forensic accounting in plain language, showing how money had been transferred and mismanaged. Finally, Judge Harrison stopped the testimony and looked directly at Denise. Mrs. Holloway, I have a question for you. Denise sat up straighter, surprised. Yes, Your Honor? You claim your husband held you back financially and prevented you from achieving your potential. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. He controlled everything. Judge Harrison picked up one of Frederick's reports and flipped to a marked page. Then can you explain why every major business asset and liability over the past decade is tied to his name, his credit, and his financial guarantees? If he was controlling you, why was he the one taking all the risk? The courtroom went silent. Denise opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Victoria for help. Victoria stood. Your Honor, my client. I asked your client. Judge Harrison said firmly. Not you. Everyone waited. Denise could not answer. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Denise looked at Victoria, at her mother, at Tyler. Her face had gone pale. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. We made those decisions together, she finally stammered. Judge Harrison raised an eyebrow. Together? But you just testified that he made all the decisions. Which is it? He pressured me to use his name. Denise tried. He said it was better for tax purposes. Do you have any evidence of this pressure? It was verbal. He would not put anything in writing. Thomas stood. Your Honor, we have documentation showing that Mrs. Holloway initiated every business registration, every loan application, every credit line. We also have witnesses who can testify she acted independently and often against her husband's expressed concerns. Judge Harrison flipped through more pages. I am seeing emails here where Mrs. Holloway thanks her husband for supporting her ventures, where she promises these businesses will succeed, where she asks him to sign just one more document. He looked up. That does not sound like someone being controlled. Denise's credibility was crumbling in real time. Victoria tried to redirect, to change the subject, but Judge Harrison was not interested in deflection anymore. The judge had seen the pattern, and his tone had shifted from neutral to skeptical. Thomas continued presenting evidence. He showed emails where Denise had pressured business partners to use my credit. He played audio messages she had left with potential investors, promising returns she could not possibly guarantee. One message in particular was damning. In it, Denise told a potential investor that her husband was completely on board with a new venture and that his credit was available for expansion. The message was dated 2 weeks after I had explicitly told her I did not want to take on more debt. This audio contradicts your earlier testimony, Judge Harrison said to Denise. I do not remember that message, she said weakly. It is time-stamped and verified, Thomas replied. Then Gregory, the former investor, took the stand. He described how Denise had convinced him to invest $40,000 in her retail business, promising exclusive contracts and guaranteed margins. None of it was true, Gregory testified. She had no contracts. She had no suppliers lined up. She just had ambition and her husband's credit. Did you ever meet Mr. Holloway during these negotiations? Thomas asked. No. She said he was busy with work, but fully supported her. Did that strike you as odd? At the time, no. Looking back, absolutely. The testimony was devastating. Even Lorraine, sitting in the gallery, looked uncomfortable. Then something unexpected happened. Lorraine, unable to contain herself, stood up in the gallery and shouted at the judge. This is ridiculous. My daughter worked her entire life while he sat back and collected a paycheck. He is twisting everything. Judge Harrison's gavel came down hard. Ma'am, sit down immediately. You are letting him lie about her. She was the ambitious one. She was the one with dreams. Bailiff, please escort this woman out of my courtroom. Lorraine resisted, still shouting about how I had manipulated everyone, how I was making Denise look bad on purpose, how this was all set up. As the bailiff led her out, Denise buried her face in her hands. The alliance that seemed so strong just an hour ago was fracturing publicly. Tyler watched the whole scene with wide eyes. Afterward, during a brief recess, he came over to me. Is Grandma always like that? He asked. Your grandmother loves your mother very much. I said carefully. Sometimes love makes people defensive. That was more than defensive, Dad. That was unhinged. I did not disagree. When court resumed, Denise was visibly shaken. Her confidence from earlier had completely evaporated. She looked small, exposed, caught. During the lunch recess, Victoria pulled Thomas aside for a private conversation. An hour later, Thomas came to me with a message. Denise wants to talk. Just the two of you. She says she needs to explain. Explain what? I asked. She did not say, but Victoria seems worried. I think they realize how bad this looks. Against Thomas's advice, I agreed to meet Denise in a small conference room at the courthouse. She sat across from me, her makeup smudged from crying. Vincent, please, she said, her voice breaking. We can still fix this. We can tell the judge it was all a misunderstanding. We can settle privately. Fix what, Denise? The lies you told? The debt you hid? I was trying to build something for us. For our family. By destroying my credit? By lying to our son? By turning everyone against me? I needed you to believe in me, she said desperately. I needed you to support me. Without questioning everything. I did support you. For 32 years. And you used that support to bury me. She reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I still need you. We can work this out. Please. I pulled my hand back. No, Denise. We cannot. The final ruling is in 2 days. Whatever happens, happens. I left her sitting there alone. 2 days later, Judge Harrison delivered his ruling. The courtroom was packed again, but this time the energy was different. Everyone knew what was coming. After reviewing all evidence and testimony, the judge began, I find that Mr. Holloway has been subjected to systematic financial abuse through the misuse of his credit, name, and trust. Mrs. Holloway operated multiple business ventures with full knowledge and access to marital funds, but chose to register these ventures under her husband's information to shield herself from liability. Denise stared at the table, not moving. The court finds that Mrs. Holloway was not held back, controlled, or prevented from pursuing her ambitions. Rather, she pursued those ambitions recklessly and is now attempting to avoid responsibility for the consequences. Judge Harrison continued, Therefore, the marital assets will be divided as follows. Mr. Holloway will retain sole ownership of the primary residence, his pension, and his personal accounts. Mrs. Holloway will be responsible for all business debts incurred under the ventures she operated. Victoria started to object, but the judge held up his hand. Furthermore, Mrs. Holloway will receive no alimony. She will, however, be required to repay Mr. Holloway for funds transferred from joint accounts into business accounts over the past 10 years. A repayment schedule will be established. I sat there absorbing the words, barely able to process what I was hearing. But there was one final condition. Judge Harrison was not finished. Additionally, I am ordering Mrs. Holloway to attend a financial accountability program and complete a court-supervised course on business ethics and personal responsibility. Failure to complete this program will result in additional penalties. Denise looked up, her face filled with shock and humiliation. The judge closed his folder. This court believes in rehabilitation as much as punishment. Mrs. Holloway has demonstrated a pattern of financial recklessness that has harmed her family. This program is designed to help her understand the impact of her decisions and prevent similar harm in the future. He looked directly at Denise. Your ambitions were never the problem, Mrs. Holloway. Your methods were. The gavel came down, and it was over. Denise sat frozen while Victoria gathered papers. Tyler came over to me and hugged me without saying anything. Patricia gave me a thumbs up from the gallery. Outside the courthouse, Denise stood alone by her car. Kyle was nowhere to be seen. Lorraine had stopped answering her calls. The new life she had been building had collapsed overnight. I drove home to my apartment, feeling lighter than I had in years. 6 months passed. I moved into a small house with a yard, nothing fancy, but mine. Tyler visited regularly, and we slowly rebuilt a relationship that had been damaged by his mother's lies. He apologized more than once for doubting me. I should have listened, he said during one visit. You were hearing one side of the story. That is natural, but I am your son. I should have known better. Now you do. That is what matters. My finances stabilized. The debts were being handled through the court order repayment plan, and my credit was slowly recovering. I even got a call from Gregory, the investor, who apologized for not seeing through Denise's schemes earlier. Work became peaceful again. Friends started reaching out, having heard the truth about what happened. Patricia invited me to church events, where people treated me with respect instead of suspicion. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Denise. Just 2 words, I am sorry. I read it twice, then deleted it without responding. There was nothing left to say. Sorry did not undo 32 years of manipulation. Sorry did not rebuild trust. Sorry was just a word from someone who finally understood she had lost everything by trying to take everything. I sat on my porch that evening, watching the sunset, and realized something important. I had won, but not through revenge or cruelty. I had won by refusing to be erased, by standing up for truth, and by protecting what was rightfully mine. Respect is not begged for. It is earned. And once you learn your worth, no one gets to rewrite it.